Lisa has worked with a large group of recognizable brands, and recently was the VP of Design at Confer Health, a biotech company building the first ever clinical-grade diagnostic testing for use at your home. Please welcome Lisa to give her talk, Good Intentions and Bad Actors, Unleashing Our True Design Superpowers.
Thanks. So I said yes when Rick asked me to come here and speak, and then I shit my pants, so it was all very true. But I also agree with what he said about it's a really, really exciting time to be a designer. It's so exciting. There are so many things going on, and I like to talk about how, we have superpowers. I want to explain exactly what that means. So if you think about what we do, if you just take a moment and think about what we do, what we're capable of every single day that I think we take for granted, we take nothing and turn it into something that makes money for companies. We take an idea, we take a problem statement, we take an observation, and we run it through our design process, and out the other end, we make an amazing solution for people. And along the way, we also align our organization around that vision. We say, come on guys, let's go this way. We work with our developers, we get things going, and we make it happen. We turn technology into value. And in my mind, that is an amazing superpower. So the internet, hasn't been around for very long. The World Wide Web has been around for about 25 years. And the amount of things that we have been able to do in this short amount of time has been phenomenal. I mean, this chart, it always makes me laugh because now it's like literally a basic human need for everyone that we have access to this. So for a few examples, after I leave here, I can peace out, I can tap a little bit, a couple taps on a piece of glass, and a car shows up and off I go. It's like I'm a James Bond supervillain. And it's really amazing what came together to make this happen. I FaceTimed with my kids last night back in Boston before I went to bed. We are able to keep in touch with families in distant countries, nearby cities. We do business online. This is face-to-face, real time. We have robots controlling the energy in our homes. We have more power on our wrist than the computer that put a man on the moon. And think about that for a second. And at the same time, it's also collecting all this data about us. We have this gig economy. We can take things that we own now and we can start to sell them, we can start to share them, we can start to make money out of that. Or I can show up in Manchester and say, where am I going to stay tonight? Oh, this looks really cool. And we've been able to sequence the blueprints of human life. And the power in the technology is so amazing that it's now consumerized. You can get genetic tests off the internet. You can find out about, now that the FDA changed some things, you can find out about your history and less about whether you have a BRCA gene or not. We've basically democratized the shit out of everything. We've taken middlemen out of all of these industries, and we have direct access to this powerful, powerful technology. However, there's a lot of risk involved. Every single one of those examples have come with some sort of downside to them. Some consequence has happened to every single one of those companies. The Nest, it suddenly just turns your house up to let me do the math, 80 degrees, what's that? 35 degrees Celsius. When our products get out to market, we often have no idea what's really going to happen out in the wild, how people are actually going to use our product. We can do usability testing, we can prepare for errors and omissions, we can prepare for workflow challenges, but when the real market get a hold of our products, we have literally no idea what's going to happen. And what about the bad actors? What about the trolls? What about the criminals that get a hold of what we do? What can they use, what can they do with our products to cause harm? And we really need to think about this. Because as designers, we spend so much time thinking about how amazing things are going to be, and we work so hard on ensuring that that actually comes true. We have the best intentions. We want to make people's lives better. We want to make things easier. And yet, it doesn't matter what your intentions were. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. It doesn't actually matter what you intended. While we're trying to move the needle, we're trying to improve people's health, we're trying to make things easier. These disruptions have not happened without consequence. And we really, really need to pay attention to this. Like I said, the Nest, it can be annoying that it changes the temperature, but what about what happens on something like Snapchat, where teenagers are being bullied to the point where they actually commit suicide? What about some other criminal activities? What if Venmo is being used for drug transactions? What are these kinds of things that could actually happen in the real world? How did we get there? What's going on? We spend so much time thinking about our processes, right? We have codified our design process, and I did a quick search, and this is what actually came up. And I have to say, one of the great things about being in design is that we have the most beautiful design processes. If you look at engineering, if you do this like mechanical engineering design process, it's an absolute disaster. So we spend a lot of time codifying our design processes. So how is this happening? How is it that we're not really truly thinking about the impact that we have? Because intentions are important, but impact matters more. So I was chatting with my friend Alyssa, and I was talking about this topic because I'm really, really passionate about this. I've worked so much of my career in these really complicated environments, in healthcare, in security, and so in enterprise as well. A lot of these things are constantly baked in. We're always thinking about when things can go sideways. But as I started working with startups, I'm realizing that they don't have that, especially the designers, the design team who I'm really closely working with, they don't have that muscle memory, they don't have those processes baked into what they do every day. And the culture and the teams that they're in, they're not there yet. We always have impact. The work that we do always has impact. It may be intentional impact, right? We want to make things better, and then we can see, hey, things are made better, things are easier, things are faster, this is great. But we also have unintentional impact, and we have to really think about that and prepare for that. Once your product is out there, it really doesn't matter what your intentions were. So let's take a bigger look, right? So like I said, I'm starting to work with more and more startups, more and more small companies. The lean startup model, I love this. It's super complicated, but again, beautiful in its way. The first two circles are the design process, but in a larger context. So if you look at design thinking, we find a problem, we work it through the process, we have a hypothesis, we try things out, then we start to sketch out some solutions. We work with the developers, and we iterate, we might pivot, come back, but we basically let the ball go between the yellow and the green circles. We're done, and we go back to the beginning of the process, right? We let the business figure out the rest of it. So we're in here cycling through this ideation, concept development, detailed design, working with the dev team, all that kind of stuff, and we rinse and repeat. We take the next JIRA ticket, or we take the next problem statement from our product manager. We're letting the business figure it out. We're not spending any time in the spaces that I'm working with now, not so much in security, that's pretty much baked in, but I'm finding that we're not spending the time to think about what could go wrong at a larger scale. What can happen, what can break, what can fail, how could people abuse the system? And in my opinion, this is making us irresponsible and bordering on negligent, and this is really, really important. So as I've been talking about this with people in my community, I'm starting to see, okay, I'm trying to look for signs. Is actually are other people thinking about this? Are other people worried about this? And I'm starting to pick up a little bit. So this was a tweet that came out actually a few days ago as I was finalizing my slides, and I thought, oh my God, this is perfect. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. It's truly time for us to take responsibility for the work that we do. It is time, and that comes with design maturity. We've only been, as software and digital designers, we've only been working in this space for like 20 years, and I've seen the evolution, and it's time for us to actually start thinking ahead and thinking about that impact more seriously, and also bake it into our design process. Start thinking about what does the future look like. when this thing is out there? What's at scale? What happens if people start to abuse it? And so on. And so there's tools out there, as I said, the engineering processes. If you Google those, you'll see a lot of interesting ones. The basic process is pretty simple. So we don't have to go, oh my God, I got to go reinvent some new tools. I got to go find a process that's going to work for us. It's actually pretty standard. You start with identifying the problems. You start with identifying what could potentially go wrong, what could go sideways, who could abuse. If I was a criminal and I was thinking nefariously, what could I do with this feature, project, product, right? What could actually happen? Consider when a lot of people are on it or using it. Think about those kinds of things. And do it at every step of the process, even when you just have an idea for a problem that you need to solve. Assess. What are the chances of that actual bad thing happening? They could be high, it could be low. And then what's the impact? What's the potential impact that could happen if it actually goes sideways? How bad could it be? Then you analyze it. You say, all right, well, what are all the environmental conditions that need to occur for this bad thing to happen? Is it like, this one thing happened and this other condition is true and then something else happens, so it's really, really rare? Or is it like, oh no, actually just, launching the app, anybody using the app, anybody using the product, it could actually happen. And then try to mitigate it. So put a mitigation in place. So Poka-Yoke, has anybody heard of Poka-Yoke before? Oh, sweet, you guys, awesome. Comes out of Toyota, lean manufacturing in the 60s. And so the idea is that you're basically you're designing in the prevention mechanism into in their case, manufacturing, so that it can't be, it can't have any problems, right? You're mistake-proofing it, which is what Poka-Yoke means. You're mistake-proofing that part. So if something could go wrong, you're actually preventing it in the design itself from happening. And that's the most important one, and that's why I've highlighted it here, because you really want to think about how do I actually bake in the prevention of abuse and criminal activity into the system. This is very high level. And then last, you want to verify, is it actually going to do the thing is it actually going to fix it? Is it actually going to do the thing that I want it to do? And so, we need to think about this, like I said, at every stage in the process. It's just a very high level process, but these are the basic steps along the way. Let me show you some examples of other domains that use this kind of process throughout their whole design process. So architecture, I worked for 5 years with a company called Autodesk. You guys familiar with Autodesk? Hopefully 3D modeling tools. They do a lot of really interesting things. I was working in the architecture, engineering, construction discipline. And if you look at their process in architecture, right, they've been around for hundreds of years, and they've kind of perfected the way that they build buildings. So at every stage in the process, before a single grain of sand is moved on site, they're thinking about risk mitigation. In their concepts, they're thinking about impact of the building on the site. They're thinking about the impact of the building on its neighbors. They're thinking about how to shape and form things, not just physically, but also from a social perspective. Are the neighbors going to be pissed off? Who's going to be really frustrated with this new thing happening? Are the people in the community going to be frustrated with the school renovation? They're thinking about all of these things at scale, micro and macro. And then they actually have a literal analysis process, a step in their process that they use. But it's a little bit, they call it out here, but it's really actually happening throughout the whole beginning of the process. So let me show you an example. So this is a solar radiation tool. This is actually something I worked on. This is the tool that I worked on 8 years ago. And you drop a 3D model into this, and you can simulate how the sun is going to react or act on the building and the site. And you can move the sun around, and you can see during different times of the year how it's actually going to work. Is the building going to get enough daylight in certain areas? Are enough people inside going to have access to daylight? If this is a school, that's really important. If it's an office building, it's really important. It looks at shadows. Does it cast shadows in certain directions? And you can also measure the heat load. So how much air conditioning we have to pump into this? And you can shape the building in a different way, so you don't have to have, this is building performance, you don't have to have as much energy demand, which affects the climate on this building, just simply by using this tool. And then at scale, you can put the building, the model, inside an urban environment on the site, and you can start to see the impact on other buildings. You can start to see the wind movement with this new building put in place. And you can look at it over different points of the year. And you can start to prepare yourself for the discussions that you need to have with other people, whether it's the owner of the building or the community. Is their neighbor going to be mad that you just blocked their line of sight? There's line of sight laws that they have to worry about. And on and on and on. And architecture isn't the only one. They're not the only folks that start thinking about this analysis and what's going to happen when their design is actually put into use. Is this A6 going to get, literally lift up off of the ground as it starts to hit speed? So they do a lot of these models, a lot of these analyses. And then, what's the impact of those cars on the road? So road designers, they simulate traffic conditions over the course of a day, over the course of a month, over the course of the holidays, over the course of the year. And they say, do we need to change the road design? Do we need to put some mitigation in place to actually minimize the impact on people's commutes, or change the road, or add another exit, or something like that? They think about this in advance. And then lastly, as you just heard, I was working on a medical device before. The FDA requires that we actually go through that process and document every single step in the process. And we have to file that documentation with the FDA to say, we thought about all these things, here's the impact, here's what we think is going to happen, and here's our mitigation plan. Okay, so you might say, okay, that's great, lovely, but you know what? I'm doing really cool stuff. Why do I need to worry about this stuff? I'm good. I'm good where I am. I'm getting paid pretty well. The business figures it out. Nobody's asking me to actually step up and think about impact and think about risk. But I say, why not us? Why aren't we getting ahead of this? Why aren't we considering the impact of our design? We're seeing what's happening out there, right? We're seeing what's changing. We're seeing the impact of organizations that don't think about what could be done with their tools and their services. I constantly hear designers, especially young designers, that are like, the business doesn't value what I do. They don't value me. And I think, well, they do value you because they hired you and they're making a shit ton of money off of you, right? But they want to be at the table where the decisions are made. They want to have more influence on the business. And I say, if you want to influence the business, you need to think about what the business cares about. And the business cares about risk mitigation. They care about legal fees. They care about how much money they're making. They care about what happens when things are out there. And if you can be someone that raises awareness and talks to people inside your organization, say, I can help you fix this. I can help you prevent it from happening. I can help you make sure that when your products get out there, people aren't going to be harmed, or that bad things aren't going to happen, or things aren't going to go sideways, and here's how we do it, then your value inside the organization actually goes up. So I'll tell you a quick story. This is Central Park. So in 1853, the New York City commissioned a design competition for Central Park. And this guy, Frederick Law Olmsted, was a horticulturist. He had really strong political ideas and very strong social ideas. And he said, ooh, this is interesting. And he partnered with this guy, Calvert, who's an architect. And he said, you know what? I believe that people's activities and behaviors are affected by the environment they're in. And gardens are lovely, and people are peaceful when they're in gardens. So let's actually build a park where the crime prevention is built in. Let's actually build and design a park where people go there and have lovely leisurely activities. They enjoy nature. They enjoy their time there. And they don't have to worry about being attacked while they're there. So they actually won the competition, and they designed this Greensward plan. And this is what was built. Now, part of the plan was actually they had to maintain it over time. So like shrubs were always really low. There was no place for criminals to hide. There were all kinds of things that were literally built into the environment to prevent crime. And obviously there were some maintenance issues, so there were some lapses in that. But this was the original intent, right? There was no landscape architecture industry at the time. No one asked him to think about crime prevention when he was doing this design. But guess what? He started getting invited to the commission's meetings to talk about, well, what other things can we do in New York City to prevent crime in the built environment? What else can we do to think about ways that aren't just like getting more police on the ground to prevent crime? And so his value in the eyes of New York City started to go up. Okay, quickly. What I want you guys to do, I want you to just take 2 seconds and think for a second the project or project that you're currently working on. And ask yourself, what would happen if 1 million people started using it? And including those 1 million people were some bad actors. What could they do to it? Do you have a data store that you're collecting information and all of a sudden that has value? Could they disrupt it? Do you creating a backdoor into this network of users? What if you already have 1 million? Nothing's happening, it's all fine. What if 10 million people were using it? How about 100 million? What could potentially go sideways if that was the case? And then what could you design in place to prevent that from happening? Or who do you need to talk to put in better security measures or think more about strengthening something to prevent that from happening? It's a very small thought exercise, but this is something that we should be doing every single day as we work on products and services. We shouldn't be waiting for an invitation. So this is something I'm really passionate about. I talk a lot about it with the people that I work with in Boston, and I'm talking about it as much as I can. I want to start integrating this into our work, right? So I would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts. Work with me if you have ideas. If you're already doing that, that's amazing. I want to continue to raise this awareness because we need to actually get ahead of this. We need to start influencing the design-making bodies, including ourselves, because we make a lot of decisions, to think more about this, think more proactively, and get ahead of this. And then with that, I think truly that's gonna unleash our true design superpowers. Not only are we gonna be making amazing things and providing great value for the companies that we serve and of course our customers, but it's going to raise our value inside the organization. Thank you.
You talked about the maturity, of the industry, which is 20 to 25 years-ish of the internet. So the internet's been around for that long. A lot of the people in this room have probably been there a lot less time than that. I mentioned earlier on that, Facebook has made certain decisions to do certain product things with regards to kind of relationships. There are lots of other things in the world where decisions have been made which aren't right or ethical or humane. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's purely a maturity thing? And or how can it be flipped around?
Well, it's funny because actually in the back I was talking with Christina about this because we were kind of joking that this is basically turning into like an ethics conference, for better or worse. But we're talking about really, really important things. And so we were talking about these humane approaches and how I said to her, I feel like I'm a mom to a lot of these young designers because they're like, yeah, we can do this really cool thing and we do this. And they just haven't been there and they haven't experienced the things that we've kind of been through, that we have the experience with. So if it's not literally codified in our processes that they learn in school and they learn as part of the design practice, then I think it's going to take a lot of pain for them to actually come up to speed on it. So I think that's why we have to actually start to codify it and put it into our standard operating procedure. But I do think that maturity is a big part of it because we've never done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge because you've got the likes of Google who just revolted against a decision to work with the Pentagon on certain contracts, and then you've got Amazon who turned around and Jeff Bezos says, well, if it's not going to be us taking that $10 billion contract, it's going to be somebody else.
Right. Yeah, money is a huge motivator.
Yeah, and how do you see it adjoining? Because if there's a CEO wanting to make money, then they're going to try and go one way.
Yep.
There'll be designers or other professionals who want to go the other way, and kind of Google revolted on that because of the amount of people within Google who wrote the letter to the CEO to say this isn't going to be it.
Yeah.
But will it take another 20 years for ethics and humane decisions to be made?
Well,
or
here's the
do you
thing.
think it'll be just a thing?
Yeah, so we're already seeing it with Facebook, right? If we don't do it, and if companies are only chasing the money, the government's going to come in and start putting regulation on us, and they're going to start saying these are the things that you actually have to do, which is what happened with architects, right? Yeah. They're like, you can't build a building that doesn't stand up, sorry, and it has to be earthquake prone in those earthquake prone environments, and it has to be this and it has to be that. So the architects they have to abide by certain local, state, national codes. There has to be so much air turnover and circulation in a building, right? So I don't know what that looks like for software, because it's not like we all do buildings, but there's probably going to be some kind of regulation if we don't step up and start self-regulating, or if the organizations don't start to actually have a better humane approach to.
How do you feel about that? Because I think it might be last year or the year before, we did briefly chat about regulation of the industry that we work within. We are probably the most unregulated industry for the massive impact that we do have across, whether it's a website or a service and or the jumping robot, which I mentioned this morning, or the creepy robot that opens doors.
Have you seen the one that dances?
No,
they
probably
just put
dances
her,
better than me, to be fair.
Huh? The Boston Dynamics just released a video a couple days ago where the robot dances. It's a really amazing, terrifying, and hilarious all at the same time.
Because the one that opens doors is just as creepy.
Yeah.
How do you think it is going to be another 20 years before decisions are made where, the thing is, by 20 years' time, we're going to not just have dancing robots, it's going to be throwing flames out of it.
Yeah.
Please.
And how do I feel about regulation?
Yeah.
There's also a discussion about licensure. Are you? Yeah. So there's a couple of really loud voices that are talking about requiring designers to be licensed. I was fundamentally against that until the past couple of years. Then I'm like, maybe I don't know. I have to think more about it. Because of the unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So I think we need to start talking about it, and we need to start getting ahead of it and start thinking about what does that actually mean? What do we want before we get that regulation imposed on us?
I mean, I haven't spoken to people within the depths of Facebook enough to understand their process for working. Within government, for instance, we go through something called a service assessment. So if we are working on a service, we will sit down with a panel of a designer, a lead product owner potentially, or a lead service assessor, user researcher, and a technical panelist as well. And that is almost to second guess all of the crazy that you could potentially see.
Yeah.
So, we would sit down and say, have you thought about this? Have you gone about that? Why on earth did you go down that road? And we will try and bring things back round. Do you know of other companies that do that in the private world? And if not, is that something that we could look at, do you think?
So I've worked for a lot of companies where that is actually built into their process, but it's not, number one, it's not design-led, but it's built in. But I've been working for these enterprise companies or like security companies or healthcare. Healthcare is like full of risk, right? So if I'm working on a service that allows a physician to get quick access to a medical record, I have to also think about, and we're forced to think about, well, who else is going to have access to that medical record if they get access to that physician's identity? And we're creating all these great ways to have quick access, because someone's dying on the table and you need to find out if they're allergic to penicillin. Are you going to kill them, or are you going to make them better? And there's like life-altering decisions that they have to make, and they have to have quick access. Well, as soon as you make this access easy, who else can get it? And what danger does that create? So I've worked at a lot of companies, but not when I'm starting to work in these startups in the consumer space, and even health-related startups. They just don't have that mindset to think about those things and actually build it in. They're just like quick go, and then let the business figure it out later.
Because at some point that's at a particular moment in time, that's probably a benefit. The fact that they are so widely kind of viewed, and spoke a long time ago about, it's the baby's way to understand something. They don't understand anything, so they just go at it wide view.
Yep.
But at some point, the parent has to come along and bring them back and
Either
say,
they
"Look,
break a leg, or they
Yes.
break a, they like fall off of something and they
Yeah.
break and they go, oh, that was a dumb idea. Or a parent has to come,
Yeah.
a parent. Kara Swisher, does anybody follow Kara Swisher? She's a tech writer, tech journalist. She keeps talking about where are the adults in the room in Silicon Valley? Where are the adults in the room? Why didn't anyone at Uber say it's really not okay for these drivers to like rape their passengers, or for someone to have like a dossier of someone who's suing them and like trying to attack them? Like, that's a bad idea, guys. What are you thinking? So yeah, so you either have to learn by doing, painfully learn by doing, or have some adult in the room.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank
Big round
you.
of applause.
Thank you, guys.